Hello everybody, I'm InTheLittleWood, also known as Martin, and welcome back to the channel. So, I created a video a little earlier on this year. It was my first video of 2019, and the majority of you via the comments section requested that I post all my Hytale content on this channel rather than setting up a new one, so that's the decision that's been made. So, obviously the game isn't out yet, but there is a ton of information already on the website, discussions on social media and the forums and subreddits and fan discords. There's a lot to digest, so today I want to take you through the initial trailer and point out some of the things that have since been clarified via the official pages, or a couple of observations that I've made myself of features that could be coming into the game. So here are 14 things you didn't know about Hytale announcement trailer breakdown. So we open on the Hypixel Studios logo, and then it fades to black, and here is our first glimpse of the world of Orbis. So that is actually point number one. So we don't actually know the name of the world in things like Minecraft, we just refer to it as the world of Minecraft, or some people dub it Minecraftia. We've actually been given the name for the planet that our characters and the story inhabit. And the reason that I want to bring this up is because I'm very certain that not many of the 31 million people that have watched the trailer will have gone through to the website to actually look at all of the source material. So this is actually one of 5 planets as well, I need to point out. So we have Orbis, which is the world that we reside on. Directly next to that, there is a planet called Nexus, which is all big and purple, and I assume that's where the dragon at the end of the trailer can be found. Then we have a planet known as Carpac, which is kind of like this weird yellow, greeny, muddy kind of color. Then we have what I can only assume is like almost like the Nether Realm equivalent, and this is a planet called Torberlin. Looks like it's just completely covered in fire and brimstone. And then there's a little neighboring one, which actually looks like it closely resembles our own planet, and it is called Numdrasil. I've probably completely butchered the pronunciation on that, but it's fine. Anyway, so that is the name of the planet that we reside on. Now, continuing on with the shot that you can see right here, one of the first things that a lot of people pointed out was the musical instrument on the right-hand side of the screen, and I'm kind of hoping that there is going to be a mixture of things going on here. I hope that you can actually just find song sheets from throughout the world and actually just play them automatically based on whatever instrument you have. And then I'd also really like it, potentially if down the line, we had the capability, kind of like in MapleStory, where you can essentially do like a MIDI keyboard but using your regular keyboard as the basis to actually play songs in real time. But that is not point number 2. Point number 2 that I would like to touch on is the fact that if you look at the lady sat by the campfire, you'll notice that she's a warrior with a sword, and she seems to be moving her hand across it left and right in a motion. That, I assume, is her using a whetstone. So if you're not 100% sure on what a whetstone is, don't worry. It's essentially a type of rock that people typically strike across a blade, they scratch across it in order to sharpen its edges. So of course this opens up the question of, can you use a whetstone inside a Hytale, or is this just a little bit of animation that fleshes out the trailer and gives a little bit of life to it? And at the moment the signs seem to be pointing towards yes, you can. So this will be a really cool way of refining our weaponry, potentially bringing back up its durability whilst we're on the move. There's going to be no need for an anvil or a weapon bench or anything like that. And the reason I believe that there's going to be durability inside of the game is because, well, we've pretty much seen it. If you have a little look at the blog post regarding user interface and make your way down to one of the lower images, this shows off the tooltips. So the tooltips is essentially information about an item when you hover over it. And if it's following the trend of other RPGs, which it seems to have done with its rarity systems and everything else like that, then it's pretty safe to assume that the bottom right corner piece of information is the durability of those weapons. And you guessed it, even more questions about Hytale spring out from this. How does the durability system work? Is it a case of your weapon's effectiveness is completely fine until it hits that 0 mark? Will it be a downward slope of power until it gets towards that 0 mark? And ultimately, can you lose your gear if you overuse it? Like, if you're not keeping a keen eye on your durability and that number hits 0, will it just completely vanish and be gone forever? Or will it just simply unequip and it'll be salvageable if you go ahead and repair it? I guess we'll have to wait a little while to find out the answer to those questions. So, anyways, on with the trailer. Let me hit play and we'll continue onwards. So, I don't really have many observations or kind of questions about gardening, although I do like to point out right there that there seems to be a proper eating animation when it comes to the food, which I adore. I love that. We've got some typical lumberjacking and some mining. We've got a guy using the weapon bench right there as well. Got some nice ambient lighting when it comes to the torches, and then we move in to the massive array of locations. And I'm going to pause this almost immediately because there is a major feature being shown off here that nobody is talking about. Sloths are an actual faction. Yup, they're going to be one of the racers or one of the factions that you go ahead and interact with in the story of Hytale, it would seem. And I can't blame people for not looking into the sloths any more than that, because I didn't either. It wasn't strange to see them inhabiting a jungle. I just assumed they were another animal that sort of filled out the world. But if you take a look at this concept artwork that came out on the same day as the trailer, it talks about all the different iconography and hieroglyphs and everything related to different factions, and one of them is listed as Slothians. So this means we're actually going to learn about their history, we're going to dive into challenges with them, we're going to help them face off against their rival faction. It just all sounds so ridiculous for sloths. And the other thing that I want to know is, do they have like reduced movement speed but higher strength? Who is their enemy going to be? I've got so many questions. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So let's go ahead and press play and hit pause. These, everybody, are the KWEEBECS. These have instantly been a fan favourite, and I don't think people will have to wait long to meet them either. It seems as though, by looking at their surroundings, they will inhabit Zone 1 of Orbis, and they'll probably be the first faction that we encounter inside of the game. I can see why they're popular as well. They're adorable, they've got a little bit of life, they've got massive eyes, and they come in all different colours and all different floral styles. And one thing that I want to talk about is who their main rival might be. So if you take a little look at the KWEEBECS 01 concept art, you'll notice that dead in the centre, there is a beardy little boy who has got a massive helmet on, and he seems to be decorating it with chalk teeth. He's obviously defeated one in battle and is now wearing it as a taunt or some kind of bragging rights. So already, hands down, best race in the game, right? Wrong. Point number 4 that you didn't know about Hytale today is the sad backstory of the KWEEBECS. The story of their birth, their growth, and their death is all quite sad, really. For a new KWEEBEC to enter the world, another has to die. It can't be any other way, so a KWEEBEC never actually gets to meet its own parents. When a KWEEBEC is born, it falls from a tree as a little sprout seedling, and it'll grow into a young KWEEBEC, it'll mature, and at the end of its lifetime, it will become an autumnal elder. When it starts to get to this phase, it will actually begin to slow down and stiffen until eventually it will come to an entire halt. When that happens, there's a huge burst of energy, a huge explosion, and an actual proper tree is left where that KWEEBEC was standing, and as you guessed it, that is where the seedlings then fall from, and the cycle begins again. Apparently, KWEEBECs can learn about their parents and the history of their race from a special few known as the Tree Singers. Now, we don't have any additional information about them just yet, but it does seem to be quite a mystical name, so I'm wondering if maybe they can walk over to these trees that used to be KWEEBECs and actually communicate with the souls that inhabit them, or maybe it's just dusty old folk that enjoy tracking history and writing it in books. So let's continue pushing onwards through the trailer. We get a glimpse of the snow region from Zone 3, and a savannah from what I can only assume is Zone 2 that accompanies an area known as the Howling Sands, and then we see a tense scene with a Lone Ranger hiding from hundreds of Scarrocks. So the Scarrocks are one of the factions that we've been given the most information about in Hytale. Not only can they come in all shapes and sizes from the same lava, but they have a very nasty streak in their history as well. So the piece of information that not everybody will know about them is that slavery plays a part in their story, and they are not on the receiving end of it. They are the enslavers. The poor sods on the receiving end of this are these adorable little furry creatures with massive ears known as the Ferens. And if you take a look at this artwork right here, you can see that there is a traditional drawing, kind of like an old cave painting, if you will, of a Scarrock soldier ordering around a young Feren. Now, what's interesting in the rest of this artwork is the actual wording next to the bracers that all Ferens seem to wear on their wrists and sometimes their ankles. They're a symbol of freedom, but what it says here is that it's traditionally worn, so this means that this has been going on for years and years and years. Or is it still ongoing? Is that going to be the story of Zone 2, us working with the Ferens to free the remaining slaves, because it seems as though there are still prisons that the Scarrocks are actively running. If you have a look at this artwork right here of the Scarrock architecture, in the bottom left corner you can see a prison cave entrance and the cells that lie beneath the surface. There is one final major observation to make about this artwork as well. We could potentially have been given the identity of the final boss of Zone 2. You'll notice that the Scarrock rune in the centre there bears a striking resemblance to the Sand Empress rune that we saw on the iconography page. And if you take a look in the bottom right corner, you'll see the wording, underground, a big magic gate leads to the instance where the Sand Empress is imprisoned. So my guess is, to put an end to the Scarrocks, or at least put them in their place, we need to cut the head off the snake and go and battle the Empress. Empress. Let's continue on with the trailer then, and now we get a glimpse at third and first view for combat scenarios, and we get a little glimpse at the Trorks as well. These come in all different shapes and sizes according to the artwork, and then the building montage begins, and we pause there. Now we'll pause in here because I know the builders out there enjoy all of their different block types, and this is actually one that we need to address. So in this screenshot right here, and also one of the latest images from the blog posts, you can see there are quite a few chunks of kind of like a grey whitey kind of block scattered all over the place, and people got talking on Twitter saying that it didn't make sense for that to appear in zone 1 because the colouring of the trees doesn't indicate snow and the weather didn't seem quite right. So Noxy, who's the project lead for Hytale, went to Twitter and challenged people to figure out exactly what it was and gave them an image clue. There were a few people that instantly recognised who this was. It was of course Tootles from the movie Hook, you know, the Peter Pan one, and this is the guy who lost his marbles. So take the S off the end and it's revealed that that block is marble. Just thought you'd like to know. We'll resume with the trailer here then, and we can see one of the players heading up against a Yeti with a fire sword in hand and riding a ram, which by the way is a really nice confirmation of mounts and taming inside of the game. And then we'll pause on this desert island. Now this could well just be a decorative piece and it's thematic for the shot for the video, but if you look in the bottom right corner you can see a character sitting over on the sand, and what lies next to them appears to be a telescope. How cool would it be if that was usable? Like, I'm guessing this game is going to be really optimized, right? It's going to run as smooth as butter, and I'm hoping that the render distances are going to be really, really far, which should hopefully mean that it wouldn't be a problem to look that far. Like the ability to scope in on distant structures and see whether a dungeon gate is there or what kind of enemies are inside of a structure, that would be sick. Following this, we get a couple of shots of the underwater exploration, which I think we'll dive into in another video, pun very much intended. And then let's pause, because there are quite a few things here that I want to touch on. Firstly, I really hope that jumping with minecarts will be a real thing and not just like a trailer ability that doesn't actually make it into the game. Like, can you imagine the cool obstacle courses that people would create inside of Hytale? That would be so fun. But the main thing I wanted to talk about here were the large, beautiful, bright, ambient, glowing, colourful ores that are inside of the cave. And actually, we've been given the name of them, so because they differ from Minecraft, let's start memorizing them now. We've of course got copper, and then we've got iron, but then we have a green ominous glow, a bit of a toxic waste vibe coming from this one right here, and it's not actually emerald. This is an ore known as thorium, Thorium, and it seems as though you can use this to make things like daggers from the artwork that we see here, and I would assume that it's going to be used as an ingredient in all sorts of recipes, whether it's staffs, wands, cleavers or swords, bows or armor sets. It should be really cool to see. And much to my disappointment, the blue ore doesn't seem to be called lapis lazuli. Instead, this dagger over here seems to indicate that it's going to be called cobalt, C-O-B-A-L-T. But on the topic of the cobalt, it seems as though some of them are lit up and some of them aren't. What does that mean? It could just be a purely aesthetic thing and not all of them are glowing up, because otherwise that would be a bit too much. Or maybe it will be a case of if they're glowing, it means you're going to get a higher chance of reward. Or maybe the glowing ones are actually kind of volatile and they have a chance of exploding on you when you try and mine them. Who knows? Following this, we get to see the entrance to a dungeon, which I'll cover in an entirely separate video when we get given more information about those. A suicidal goblin yeets himself off the bridge, and then we'll pause again, because right here we could potentially have our first glimpse of the planet of Tor Berlin, or it could well be just Zone 4 in the regular world of Orbis, but I've got my fingers crossed it's the former. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that we may actually know the name of this mob already. So later on in the trailer, when you see the animation of one of the little cacti creatures, on the left-hand side of the screen there are a list of various different beasts from the world of Hytale, and one of them is known as an Ember Wolf, E-M-B-E-R-W-U-L-F, and this kind of fits the bill, right? So let's click play, not get too creeped out by the spiders, and then here he comes, the big man, and again, pause. So at the beginning of that engagement, you'll have noticed that the warrior, or paladin if that's what he technically is, did a regular two-handed swing with his axe and nothing else happened. No extra particle effects, no shimmering, but soon followed it up with what I can only assume is a special move. And the evidence that I have backing this up is if you look at the character sheet here from the UI blog post, we can see that there are a load of things represented. We've got health, health buffs, we've got armor, we've got melee damage, range damage, magic ability damage, and then we have this strange blue swirl. And it seems to have a very low count amount of only 1. So 1 special attack per fight sounds like a fair amount in my opinion, although it seems as though you can also upgrade it to unlock maybe just an extra 1 or 2 of them, and I think that may be what we're looking at. Now, we currently have 0 information as to how you would regenerate that ability, whether you have to visit a well or a certain shrine, or maybe you'll just have items that when you consume them replenish it. It could even go as far as it regenerates over time, or maybe even when you take damage and deal damage, that all goes into a gauge that builds up to get your 1 special move out. Either way, I like that a special move is something you have to be mindful about and tactical about in order to play a situation the best way. So we've given the big man the boot and we've got ourselves some loot. Let's head on over to the minigame servers, and there are more cameos in this section of the video than you initially thought. At this point, anybody who watches Dan TDM will know for certain where he is inside of this video. Same goes for Simon and Lewis as well. They're in the background when the player drops down off of the ledge, but there are still 3 more people you've missed. Firstly, if you look in the background by one of the minigame warp statues, you can see Adam Clark, also known as Wizard Keen, just hanging out there having a great time. And then right in the foreground, clear as day, you can see Stampy, Squishy, and their dog Alex. And there's no two ways about it with this one, it is definitely them. If you look at the t-shirts, bang in the center of them, each of them has their own respective channel avatar. And seeing this has got me thinking, what degree of character customization do you think we'll get within Hytale? At the moment, I'm a little apprehensive because it hasn't been discussed publicly, and the character creator does seem relatively extensive, but I'm worried that we're not going to be able to add those personal touches. So now it's time to dive through the portal and see some mini-games. Kicking things off with Sky Wars, and there's only one tiny detail that I noticed here, and it's the lady on the left-hand side of the screen doing what I can only assume is TNT jumping. Unless it's her being hit by a grenade, but that kind of seems unlikely given her movements. But it's cool to know that TNT is going to be inside a Hytale. From here we move on to the good old Hunger Games, and we need to pause here because there's something a little bit morbid here. Corpses! Corpses are in Hytale. I'm now seeing why it's going to get that teen rating that it's going for. Look at poor little Damien right there. I'm going to hazard a guess that he's not just like knocked out or stunned, because you can just see him sprawled out on the floor and there's a sword and another item just floating above him. It'll be really interesting to know whether the bodies just remain there for the duration of whatever minigame you play, or whether they'll just sort of fade out of existence over time, or if they'll sink into the earth, or maybe they'll poof into smoke and then vanish. The video cuts a little bit too soon for us to see, but I just thought that was a nifty little detail. Moving on, we take a look at a large-scale fight, the modded game modes that we'll be able to create, the animation tools, and then a brief look at the adventure mode. Now, I'm not going to cover the adventure mode in this video today because I want to make a more in-depth video about that, utilizing the user interface blog post and hopefully an adventure blog post in the near future. So for now, let's skim past it, and I want to pause on this scene right here because it raises a huge question. Will all races be playable inside a Hytale? Because looking at the cinema here, it's important to note that there's not just humans in the audience. We've got a skeleton on the right, a Ferran a couple seats away from them, we've got a Trork down at the front, we've got a Merman on the left, even a Chieftain Trork over on the left hand side, and one of those dungeon goblins. So we know from the UI blog post that servers and minigames are going to be separate entities. My guess is that if you're a server owner, you'll be able to set the rule set as to which character models you can use as yourself. So if somebody wanted to make a Trorks vs KWEEBECS PvP server, or just make a general chat room where anybody can be anything they want, you know, kind of like a Ready Player One vibe, or maybe even somebody's going to make like an MMORPG and have 2 major factions like the Alliance and the Horde from World of Warcraft, that could be so cool and this would facilitate it. Then we see a cheeky bit of world edit, followed by the movie making tools, which I'm going to hold out for more information on, and then pause. If you pause the trailer at any moment during the live scripting section, you'll notice that there is a screen in the top left corner, and of course it's got lots of random code which I'm never going to be able to comprehend, but then in bold font there is actually a web address. If you were hawk-eyed enough to spot it, then you can tap it into your browser, which is hytale.com/super secret page. When you get there, you are met by Turbo Chicken riding what looks like a buffalo. Nice. Then to wrap everything up, we have got the beginning of an epic encounter and battle with a load of skeletons, and of course, the Void Dragon needs to turn up and crash the party. Gee. Thanks, dude. But in a future video, I want to talk about the dragon a little bit more extensively and how this scene right here could be set on the planet of Nexus. And also, I feel as though I may know the name of the main antagonist of the story of Hytale. And I think that just about wraps us up for today's video. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. There are 14 and probably an additional 7 or 8 things that you didn't know about Hytale. So over the next few weeks, if this video is well responded to enough, I have got so much more to talk about, like the goddess guest Gaia and what I think the main storyline's going to be, dungeons, ocean content, dinosaurs, and way more. I intend on going through each blog post as and when they release, as well as the existing ones, cross-referencing them with the concept art to really give you a good sense of what is going to be happening inside of this game. So I'll leave it there for now. Cheers for watching, let's talk about Hytale, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.